Hi everyone, it's Lisa Mears. Thank you for being here. Today I'm making 24 cards using two of the brand new Christmas kits from Violet Studio. These kits are from the Home for Christmas collection, and I'll be using the card making and stamping kit as well as the die cutting and embossing kit. They are two separate kits, and I quickly show you my unboxing of those kits here. If you want to see my complete unboxing video, I'll link it at the top right corner of this video and in the description box below. So as I said, these are two separate kits. The card making and stamping kit contains a stamp set, stickers, ephemera, a pattern paper pad, pom-poms, and 6x6 card bases and envelopes that are already decorated for you. The die cutting and embossing kit has two embossing folders, a few dies, embellishments, ribbon, and 6x6 blank card bases. Since everything in this collection goes together, I decided to combine the two kits. This collection also has a decoupage card making kit and a gift decorating kit, which contains tags, twine, pom-poms, washi tape, and more. And I'll have a link to the card kits and the entire collection in the description box below so you can check them out. I will be bringing in some solid smooth cardstock from Scrapbookcom using the Peppermint paper pad as well as the Christmas paper pad. I thought that the colors in these two paper pads complemented the 6x6 paper pad in this collection very nicely. So the 6x6 paper pad contains 3 sheets of 3x3 cut aparts. I went ahead and cut those 3x3 squares out of the paper pad to use on my cards. So for my first card, I'm using a square scalloped die, and I die cut a piece of the red cardstock from the Scrapbook.com Christmas Solid Cardstock paper pad, and I'm going to add the 3x3 card right on top of that scalloped square. I cut the tree pattern paper to 5¼ by 4 inches, and I'm going to add the fa la 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 ribbon around the bottom portion of that pattern paper. I am going to take out some double-sided adhesive tape and just put some tape on the ends so that I can easily wrap that around and stick it to the back of that pattern paper. I also cut a piece of red solid cardstock to 5 3/8 by 4 1/8. You see it there lying on the table, and that tree pattern paper is actually going to go right on top of the solid red. So I go ahead and add the square to the pattern paper and then add that entire layer to the red cardstock. And then I'll add that to an A2 size card base. My card base measures 4¼ by 5½ inches. And then I'll add some of these red gems to the 3x3 card. And I did complete 3 of these cards. Since there are 3 identical pieces of pattern paper in the paper pad, I went ahead and made 3 cards from this design. For my next card, I am using the 'Tis the Season to Be Jolly 3x3 card, and I'm adding that to a piece of solid green cardstock from the Scrapbook.com Christmas paper pad. And the green measures 3 1/8 by 3 1/8, and then I have this fa la 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 pattern paper that I cut to 2 by 5 1/4, and I'm going to add that to a solid green piece that measures 2 1/8 by 5 1/4. And then I have the car pattern paper that measures 4 by 5 1/4, and I'll add that to the green cardstock that measures 4 1/8 by 5 3/8. And now I'm just going to put all of these layers together with that small green strip going right down the middle of the car paper. I will be adding some scrap cardstock to the left and right side of that sentiment square, because that sentiment square is going to go right in the middle of that card layer, and I want to make sure that it lays flat on that card layer. So by adding these strips will allow that square to lay flat on the card, because as you can see, the middle of the card already has 2 extra pieces of cardstock underneath it with the fa la 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 paper, so those 2 strips on the left and right side will allow it to be even. So I added it to an A2 size card base, and now just to jazz it up a little bit, I'm bringing out my Scrapbook.com pops of color, and I'm just adding some pops of color over the white dots and the little red berries that are on the front of this 3x3 card. The pops of color are a liquid embellishment, so they go on wet, but when you let it dry, it will dry raised and it will also dry hard. So make sure you set your card aside to let this dry before you handle it. So as you can see, just by adding some liquid embellishment using the pops of color, you can add a little more interest to your card. And I also created 3 of these cards. So for my next card, I have another 3x3 card. This one says Merry Christmas with the old-fashioned pickup truck. I layered that onto a piece of white cardstock that measures 3 1/8 by 3 1/8. I also have 2 strips of the Presents pattern paper that measure 1 3/4 by 4 7/8, and I'm adding that to a piece of red diagonally striped pattern paper that measures 4 1/8 by 5 3/8. Now, by the way, I do have a coordinating blog post with all of the measurements and up close pictures of all of my cards. So if you did want to duplicate any of these cards, you can refer to that blog post for all of the card measurements. You can find my blog post at lisamearsdesigns.com, and I will have a link to that coordinating blog post in the description box of this YouTube video. So I have a piece of ribbon that I cut down to size, and I added some tape to the ends, and I'm just adding it to the middle of that card layer. So just wrapping it around the card layer so that the double-sided tape sticks on the back. And then I will add the 3x3 card to that card layer right in the center. Next, I'm going to add this to an A2 size card base that measures 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inches. And to finish up this card, I will be adding some of the white pops of color over all of the white dots on that 3x3 card. So all of these white dots, they represent the snow, and I think by adding the pops of color, it just brings some dimension to the snow. So here's an up close look, and you can see all of that dimension from the pops of color. I did create 3 of these cards. And moving on for my next card, I'm also using the 3x3 card. This is Home Sweet Home. I'm adding it to a piece of the teal cardstock from the Peppermint paper pad. And that teal cardstock is 3 1/8 by 3 1/8. I cut down a piece of the holly pattern paper to 4 1/8 by 5 3/8, and I'm adding it to a piece of the teal cardstock that measures 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inches. The red striped pattern paper is 4 1/8 by 1 3/4 inches, and I'll add that along the lower portion of that card layer, slightly underneath the 3x3 card that I'm going to add right above it. I die cut a piece of the pattern paper using a scallop die. This is a Slimline border scallop die from Scrapbookcom. It comes in a set of 6 borders, and I chose to use the scallop and add it here at the bottom of this striped paper. So you can see that I die cut it with the pattern paper that has the red with the white dots. And next I'll add the old-fashioned pickup truck ephemera piece right above that scalloped border. Next, I'm going to add that entire layer to an A2 size card base. And then I'll finish this up by adding some of the red pops of color on all of those berries. This is the Rudolph red color. I did create 3 of these cards, but for one of them I used the old-fashioned car with the Christmas tree on top because I only had 2 of the old-fashioned pickup truck ephemera pieces. For my next card, I took the Fa La 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 sentiment piece, and it is a banner shape, and I just cut that banner portion off of the right side, and I'm just going to layer that on a piece of green cardstock, and I'm going to cut a banner shape out of the left side of the green cardstock, and then I'll layer that Fa La 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 sentiment right on top. So the right side of the sentiment will be flush with the green edge of the cardstock, and then you'll be able to see the green peeking above, below, and on the left side of the sentiment. I also cut a thin green strip that measures 4 1/8 by 1/4 inch, and I'm adding it to the bottom of the tree paper that measures 4 1/8 by 2, and then I'll add that to the red with the white polka dot pattern paper that measures 4 1/8 by 5 3/8. I'll add the fa la 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 sentiment flush right with the red and white polka dot pattern paper. And then I'm going to add the old-fashioned car with the presents on top, but I am going to add some double-sided adhesive foam to the back of the card just so that it pops up a little bit from the cardstock. I'm also going to add the Merry Christmas sentiment with some double-sided adhesive foam on the back of that and add it to the top portion of that card layer, and then I'm going to add some of the gold gems to the top of the card. I'll add that entire layer to a piece of green cardstock that measures 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inches. And then I'll add that to an A2 size card base that measures 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. I did create 3 of these cards, but for one of them I added the tan car with the Christmas tree, and I also added the driving home for Christmas sentiment. And that's only because the ephemera pack only came with 2 of the fa la 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 la, 2 of the Merry Christmas, and 2 of the red old-fashioned cars. Now, if you wanted to purchase an extra pack of the ephemera so that you have more to use on your cards, Scrapbookcom does sell the extra ephemera on their website that you can purchase separately. For my next card, I decided to use the 6x6 green card base. This is a blank card base. You can decorate the front yourself. And the die cutting and embossing kit does come with 2 red, 2 craft, 2 white, and 2 of the green 6x6 card base blanks. So for this card, I cut a piece of white cardstock to 5 1/2 by 5 1/2 inches, and then I cut down the holly pattern paper to 1 7/8 by 5 3/4 and added it to the left side of the white cardstock. And then the fa la 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 paper I cut to 4 by 5 3/4 and I added it to the right side of the white cardstock. I'm going to take a piece of ribbon and I'm going to add it over where those 2 pieces of pattern paper intersect. So I'm just adding some double-sided tape to the back, and then I'll put it right over top of that intersection of the pattern papers, and then I will just wrap it around the back so that it sticks to the back of that cardstock layer. I'll add that layer to a piece of red cardstock that measures 5 3/4 by 5 3/4. I die cut a circle using a circle die, and I added the "'Tis the Season to Be Jolly" sentiment right on top of that circle. I also used the car die and die cut it out of red cardstock. As you can see, that car has a stack of presents on top of it that are attached, and those presents have some embossed lines on them. So I'm just taking a white gel pen and I'm going over those lines just to make the detail in those presents stand out a little bit more. So I'm going to go ahead and arrange my car at the bottom lower right hand corner of this card. I do die cut 2 Christmas trees, a large one and a small one, and I add those first because the car will overlap the large Christmas tree somewhat. So I go ahead and glue my card down to the card base. I did die cut the wheels out of a dark gray cardstock. I'm using the Scrapbookcom Christmas solid paper pad for the paper for the car, the Christmas trees, as well as the tires. And I also die cut the car again just to get the windows for the car, and those are out of a lighter gray cardstock. There are also some dies that are presents, and I die cut a few of those, although I'm not going to use all of them. I'm just going to use actually 2 of the smaller ones. I'm just using a white gel pen to go over the lines on those presents to add more detail to them. Then I'm going to add 2 of the presents to the sentiment, so just on the left and right side of the sentiment. And then I'll add that entire layer to the 6x6 card base, the green one. Next, I'm going to add some of the white Scrapbookcom pops of color to both of my Christmas trees so that it looks like that the Christmas trees have snow on them. And then last, I just added a bow right beneath the sentiment, and I created 2 of these cards. And I'll be adding the pops of color to the second card off camera. For my next card, I decided I'm going to go ahead and create something for the center of the card, which I don't often do on camera. I die cut a scalloped square die from white cardstock, and I'm stamping out the sentiment, "'Tis the season to be jolly." This is from the stamp set that's included in the kit. I stamped it out in red, and then I'm adding one of the holly leaves, and I'm going to stamp that out in green. I'll add the dots for the berries underneath those leaves, and then I'll stamp those in red as well. And that's going to be the inside of my square red card base. So I'm just going to glue that into the inside of the card. And for the front of the card, I'm going to use this pattern paper, cut it down to 5 3/4 by 5 3/4 and add it to the front. I'm also going to add a stitched circle that I die cut out of a very light green cardstock. It's very similar to the green in the pattern paper. That green cardstock is from the Scrapbookcom Peppermint paper pad, and then I also die cut a scallop circle frame out of red cardstock, and I'm going to glue that directly on top. And I'm going to bring this close to the camera here so that you can see all of that beautiful stitching on both of those die cut pieces. I use the large Christmas tree die and die cut 3 trees, and I'm going to arrange them in my circle. Before I add them to the card, I am going to just ink up the edges with some green ink just to add some more depth to those trees. And then I'll go ahead and glue those down to the circle. So the one in the center is going to be slightly raised, slightly higher than the other two. And then underneath the trees, I'm going to use one of the stamps that came with the stamp set. So the stamp set comes with an old-fashioned pickup truck and also an old-fashioned car with some presents, and I chose to use the car. And I went ahead and colored it up off camera, and I'm going to add it to my scene. I also stamped out the sentiment "Fa la 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 la" on some white cardstock, just trimmed it down, and then put it right underneath that car. And lastly, I'll bring in the white pops of color to add snow to the Christmas trees. And I created 3 of these cards, 2 with the red card base, and 1 I used the craft card base and then just put a layer of red between the card base and the pattern paper. I wanted to make sure I got that red cardstock in there because it matches the scallop circle and the car. So moving on, you can actually take the same design and convert it into an A2 size card, and that's what I did with this one. I know not all of us like to create these square cards because they do cost more money for postage. So if you wanted to make that into an A2 size card, it's pretty simple to just scale it down. So this time I took 2 trees instead of 3. I decided to go ahead with a teal green and then the darker green, and I'm just adding some lines on the trees. Instead of adding the pops of color, I'm just using a white gel pen to add the lines to add the detail. I also die cut a white stitched circle and then another regular circle with some of the white and red striped paper and just layered those together. If you wanted to do a scallop frame, you can do that as well, but I'm just using circles for this one. And then I'm using one of the die cut images for the car, and I'll add that to the Christmas tree. So I'm going to go ahead and add the trees to the circles, and then I'll add the die cut car, and I'm going to put some foam on the back of that die cut car just so that it pops up in front of the trees. The pattern paper with the words on it, I cut down to 4 by 5 1/4. I'm going to add that to a piece of red cardstock that measures 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inches. I also cut a piece of green cardstock. The green cardstock measures 4 inches by 5/8 inches, and I'm going to just add that right underneath that circle, and then I'll go ahead and glue the circle right down to the card. I'll add that layer to an A2 size white card base. And then to finish this up, I'm going to add some gold gems to the circle. I did not add a sentiment to this card because I felt like the pattern paper says it all. And I created 2 of these cards. For my next card, I'm going to be using the mini embossing folder that came with the die cutting and embossing kit. There are 2 embossing folders in this kit, and these can be purchased individually if you didn't want to purchase the entire kit. They measure about 2 3/4 inches by 5 3/4 inches, and they're perfect for mini slimline cards. So I go ahead and add my green cardstock to the embossing folder and run this through my die cutting machine, and you can see all of the beautiful detail on that cardstock. Now the cardstock that I'm using is the Scrapbookcom cardstock that I showed you at the beginning of this video, and the cardstock actually has a white center. So I'm taking a piece of sandpaper and I'm just sanding off the top of the cardstock to expose the white core, and you can see all of that beautiful detail on that cardstock. So I go ahead and finish sanding this off camera. And then when I'm finished, I make sure that that green cardstock is 2 3/4 by 5 3/4. So if you cut it a little bit larger at the beginning, just make sure you cut it down because I am making this into a mini slimline card. I do back it up on that pattern paper that measures 3 by 6, and I add it to a mini slimline card base that measures 3 1/4 by 6 1/4. Now to get the mini slimline card base, just cut a piece of white cardstock, 6 1/2 by 6 1/4, score it at 3 1/4 on the 6 1/2 inch side. And now I'm just going to go in with my pops of color, and I'm just going to put some pops of color over all of those little dots. So the white ones will represent the snow, and then I'm going to come in with the red and I'm going to add the red over the trio of berries. And for my next card, I'm going to also be making a mini slimline card using another embossing folder. This one has a little snowy scene with the old-fashioned car and some trees. So I embossed that on white cardstock, and this time I'm going to come in with some green ink. Here I'm using my Scrapbook.com Pine ink, and I'm just taking a little makeup brush and I just dabbed it in the green ink and I'm putting it over top of the Christmas trees just to add some ink to those trees. And I'm just using a eyeshadow brush. You can use a Q-tip or any type of small brush here so that you can stay within the borders of that tree. There are 3 Christmas trees on this embossing folder, so I go ahead and ink up all of them. You can also try to use a colored pencil and color these up. That would probably work as well to add some green to the trees. So I'm going to finish this up off camera, and I'm going to go ahead and bring this closer to the camera just so you can see all that detail. And then I'm going to take the Scrapbook.com Gingerbread Ink, which is a light brown ink, and I'm just going to ink up the trunk of those trees with the gingerbread ink. Next, I'm going to use a light blue ink. This is the Scrapbook.com Glass Slipper ink, and I'm just going over the inside of the windows to make them blue. Next, I'm going to work on the car. So I go ahead and take the die of the old-fashioned car, and believe it or not, it is the same size and shape as the one on the embossing folder. So I just die cut it out of red cardstock, and I did add my white gel pen to the presents to add the detail. So I lined up the car image with the one on the embossing folder, and then I added the tires. Next, I cut a strip of dark gray cardstock, and I'm adding it to the bottom of the card layer so that this represents the road that the car is driving on. Next, I'll bring in my white gel pen and I will add the lines going across the road. For the sentiment, I'm going to use the fa la 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 la. So I'm going to stamp it down on some black cardstock using some Versamark ink because I'm going to do some embossing. I first add powder to the black cardstock so that the embossing powder does not stick where there's no ink. Next, I ink it up with the Versamark ink, stamp that down really well. Then I remove my cardstock from my MISTI, and I'm going to sprinkle some white embossing powder over top of the cardstock. I will shake off the excess, and then I will heat set that. I will trim down my sentiment and set it aside. Meanwhile, I'm going to add the white card layer onto the red and white striped pattern paper, and the pattern paper measures 6 by 3 inches. And then I'm going to add that to a piece of black cardstock that measures 6 1/8 by 3 1/8. And then I will add the fa la 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 sentiment onto the card. And then that entire layer is going to go on a mini slimline card base. My card base measures 6 1/4 by 3 1/4 inches. I'll finish this card up by adding some of the red gems, and that completes this card. So I hope you liked my cards today. I would love for you all to leave me a comment and let me know which card was your favorite. If you are interested in any of these products, I will have product links down in the description box of this YouTube video and on my blog at lisamearsdesigns.com. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and be sure to click that subscribe button and turn on your bell notifications for more card making inspiration from me. Thanks so much for watching, everyone. Have a great day. Bye-bye.